Hello, dear Bodhisattva friends. You will not be able to see my face in this video, and let me say it's really good because I haven't been able to cut my hair in many months. So, yeah, it's good for that you really cannot see me. So, apart from that, yes, I will try to engage in this task to explain to you stanza as good as possible, but I think I will not be able because I'm a very impatient person and I have no knowledge and no realization of the Dharma. But anyway, I will try to give you an insight in how I understand the stanza that I've chosen. I've chosen stanza number 8 um, because in my humble opinion, it is a bit the fire starter of the insight that Shantideva is aiming for. And because of that, that is the stanza also explains itself very easily if you interpret it literally. Shantideva says, that is why I have to, how do you say, take away the fuel of this enemy. And I think the fuel, of course, is a lack of understanding of emptiness and a realization of compassion that automatically comes from it. Um, and of course, this enemy is the impatience, the discomfort that comes from the fact that I want something to happen and that it does not happen, or the fact that I don't want something to happen and it happens. So we see that the external circumstances are getting the blame. Uh, the other things that are happening are experienced in my mind as unwelcome because something happens and I don't want it to happen. So the other things are experienced as unwelcome and are perceived as an obstacle to my mind. But of course, as we all know, um, the opposite of what should happen to take away the fuel of this enemy is, of course, to meditate on emptiness and the compassion that goes hand in hand with it, uh, which makes, and that's the second sentence, this enemy has no other function to harm me. So this discomfort and this anger has only one purpose, and that is to make my mind feel discomfort. Let me make harmful deeds, so not only harming myself but also harming others. So in that way, uh, the discomfort I bring to myself, I am also bringing that discomfort to others. And in the other way, realized emptiness and the causes and conditions of these unwelcome things happening to me, understanding that they are empty, of course, is helping myself and is also, of course, helping others. But that, of course, is, I think, the easy explanation um, uh, that an impatient person as me can, of course, easily read into these words. Uh, I, I'm not now going to the screen and try to explain to you um, why I have seen in my mind why I am impatient. So, as I told you before, I'm a very impatient person, um, and the mechanism I have seen in my mind is the one I've written down on the screen. Um, if you see here, you have a timeline from the past, of course, to the now and to the future. The M stands for a moment of perception. So we are now in the now, and so I call this moment of perception MN. So a moment of perception in now. But of course, we all know that, for example, when we see a tree, the tree existed, of course, before this moment in the now, and we have like a recollection of many other moments, of course. So we can remember the past, and we can remember having a perception of that tree in the past. But of course, we have the now, we have the past, but we have a third time, the future. And then I said, okay, take a random point here of perception, mn plus 1, mn plus 2, mn plus 3. So we know there are going to be more perceptions of that tree into the future. That, of course, those 3 times are embedded in the emptiness, where all things exist in the space to move and to change, where all causes and conditions come together, move to each other, and make something exist. But of course, intellectually, you know, there's also the change. What did I discover in my mind? Why am I so impatient? Well, I discovered that when, for example, I see this tree in the now, I single out this single perception and I think the tree as unchanging, meaning that what I see now, I mentally project on those moments in the past, and I project what I see now, I project it on future moments, which makes that I perceive what I see now, I perceive it as unchanging. So this moment in the now gets a stretched meaning, as if it appears as not changing from the past in the now to the future. So we create this metaphysical construct of a tree. So we think the tree as not changing. So we get a metaphysical construct which makes me expect also that the tree will not change. So I perceive it, I will think this perception as non-changing, and because I think it as not changing, I will expect it also to exist in the same way in the future. And there's of course the problem. I have the freedom to think something as not changing, and that is, I don't think that is the problem. That is pure intellect. But the problem is, in my mind, is that I get this psychological, how do you say, it is because I think it as unchanging, I will believe my own mental projection on the future. So it is like a magician who falls in love with his own, how do you say, a figure he creates from the smoke. So it appears that it is unchanging because I think it is unchanging. And when I get unaware of this process, then I create expectations. For example, the tree now stands tall, but in the future there's a storm and the tree will crack. And that can of course upset my mind, because in my mind I was thinking the tree, I was thinking the tree as always going to be there. And then of course that is possible, and that is okay. But when I cling to this expectation, when I cling to this moment in the now as existing forever, then I have a problem. When I start to believe in my own illusion. illusion like creation. And then expectation becomes a poison or an enemy, because the tree cracking down is a natural thing to happen. But the natural things to happen, so moving, existing, changing, becomes something unwelcome, because I cling so much to my expectation, things not to change. And that makes me unhappy, uneasy. And it can be with everything. Like, for example, a relationship. You have a relationship with somebody, and you think this relationship as eternal. So you start to accept. You start to expect that its nature is going to be unchanging. So when the relationship ends, we see that we emotionally cling to our own expectations. An expectation fueled by the fact that our mind has the natural capability to stretch the meaning of a temporary perception in the now. And again, I see there's nothing wrong to do with this, but when I get emotionally stuck to this stretched meaning or this metaphysical construct, I will start to have expectations that are not realistic, and I will become angry or disappointed. The same thing can happen with the fact if you have to do something difficult, you expect yourself to do it at a certain deadline, so you create again this expectation. You get emotionally involved with this expectation, you cling to it, and when you don't make that deadline, you will start blaming yourself because you have not fulfilled to something you have projected here in the future. That is how I see how my mind is actually continuously disturbed by expectations. Not that it is wrong to have expectations, but there's an emotional bond that you create, and you start to believe your own stretched meaning as really going to happen. Instead of that stretched meaning can be like a beacon. There's nothing wrong with assuming that this tree will be there in the future. For example, that you will not build anything there and you expect the tree there to be for a long time. But still, things can change and things can happen that makes the mind uneasy. And I repeat myself continuously. When we get emotionally bound and we have this mental misperception of what the stretched meaning really actually is. It is also just a thought that helps us, that helps us make certain, not assumptions, but the fact that I can think the tree will be there in a few days means that, for example, I can make plans to build a bench underneath it to sit in the shade, for example. So the stretched meaning has something useful. But the problem is when we are going to, we are going to think and assume, especially assume, that the stretched meaning is one-on-one the same with the nature of reality. And there is where I see in my mind a very big issue, and that is what then makes me angry. This was a very long video. I did not intend to do this, so I apologize. I hope I did not waste your time. And well, yeah, I hope to see you guys soon at the next retreat. Really makes me happy to expect it will happen. Anyway, Thank you very much, and goodbye.